Hi, welcome to Daslius, Learning the Language of Autism. Belle here. Thank you for tuning in, watching. Hope you've been enjoying my series on routines and autism. So this is number 5, chapter 5, regarding, and we're coming to the end of this series now. We've talked about many things, and I hope that it's built sort of a picture of the intricacies and the importance of routines within the autistic world. We all like routines. Every human being on the planet likes a little bit of a routine. We create rituals and routines all the time. It's just that some are more important than others, and as already discussed, the reasons why routines are important, the things that they can help, other skills they can help develop because of the routine, and with language and social skills and understanding their own, your own body and what it can do, and concepts and all sorts of reasons why routines are very important. We've talked about the depth of routines, whether they're big grooves, small grooves, and so on. So in this week, I want to talk a little bit about the unpredictable life changes that happen, that no matter amount of planning or preparing, life sometimes, we can't control everything. And I think for the first few years of Georgie's life, when he was little, as an anxious mother, trying to make the world, autism friendly for my precious boy, and I did a pretty good job. But as he grew and developed and got older, and because I want him to be out there in the world, not just keeping him at home, which would make life easier for making predictability happen, even though there's still unpredictable things. Things break, things stop working. There's never a guarantee. But I learned as I went that I couldn't protect him from a changing world, and nor should I, because not to the extent that I was, because that was giving George a false sense of security, and he needs to be able to figure stuff out for himself and also build up some resilience naturally and as easily and as gently as possible. So I'm going to talk about some life unpredictable changes that happen, and we've experienced some, like everybody does, and the usual ones we've all got right now has been during this virus and the lockdown that we've all experienced, and it's had a massive impact on all of our lives, whether we're autistic or not, and that's something we've all got in common. But because I'm here to talk about autism and all things autistic, that's what I'm going to stick to. So with the lockdown, it was, I think, it's the obvious things, like there's no more school or nursery or college, there's no more going to your respite places to out with your support workers, there's no more people coming to the house if that's okay, there's no more going to your usual places, there's all of that, but there's also the change in people's personalities. So there's a lot of fear around, there was a lot of different language being used, there's a lot of anxiousness and worry and uncertainty, and that can have a huge impact on a very sensitive person, such as an autistic person, because they'll be picking up all the fear. And if they watch the TV, or if you have news on in the house and they're seeing all the scary images and seeing all these weird people in weird suits and people talking about people dying and all of this, it can be very very scary and overwhelmingly scary for a lot of autistic people that are already anxious and worry about things. So a really intense time, and I'm sure those of you that are watching that have got autistic people in your lives, you will be going yep. So we've all got something that we can go, yeah, that, that was tough, still is tough. And, I'd be interested to know, like, what changes have you seen in your autistic person, in your loved one? What strategies have they come up with to help them cope? What have you done? If anything, what's happening out there? Like, it would be good to share. Sometimes other changes that happen away from the virus are, an animal dying, a pet, or a toy, losing a toy that they've always had, or an object that they love and it's gone, can be massive in an autistic person's life. A death of a parent or a family member that's significant in their lives can be not a big deal, or it can be a massive deal. It's just, you know. And the main topic for this really is the unpredictable life changes, but the bit that I really want to talk about is within those big life changes, sometimes behaviours look like they're regressing. So therefore routines, because the big routine has changed or something massive has happened in their lives, it will have a knock-on effect on the rest of their lives and the rest of their routines. So we've had a couple of big changes in our lives the last year. The first one was George and I moved to this house that we're in now, and that happened in October last year. And George has moved many times in his life, and so he's used to it. But we have a routine and a way that we do things, and it's worked for us. And I've spoken about this before in my house moving video. And so that was a massive, big change, which he coped with really well, and it was amazingly successful. But then in December, his dad got really sick and terminally ill, and in January this year, he passed away. So I've spoken about that before, so I'm not going to go on about it, but my point is that was an incredibly massive change, on top of a change of house moving a couple of months previously. Now suddenly his dad has passed away and he's just gone, that's it, boom. And he was a very present father. So we weren't together, we lived in separate houses, we were divorced, but he, was very present in George's life. So he saw him every day, and he had him every weekend and through holidays and whatnot. So for George, that was incredibly impactful, as it was for me. So it was a two-way thing. He got it because it was a change in his life. So all his usual routines and the routine of being here for 4 days and going off to his dad's for 3 days and coming back here. It was a nice flow, and we had a really cool routine going. Suddenly that part of the routine was gone. So we had to create new ones, and he had to get used to that part not being there. So quickly needed to replace it with stuff, which we've done. 6 months on, 5 months on, we're in a new routine, well established, and it's all been good. Now, George seemingly and has coped incredibly well with his dad not being around anymore, and it's astonished me that he has coped so very, very well with it. But what I've noticed since that's happened is that other aspects of Georgie's rituals and routines have increased, and some new ones have been born because that is what's helping him cope with the massive change of his dad not being around anymore. So, for example, he has become, like, the OCD aspect of Georgie's needs have become bigger. So whereas before he needed to do one thing, just something once, like it might be walking past the sofa on the way to the loo and touching a book, which he leaves on the end of the sofa. It's just one of his little things. He would always touch it once. Now he'll touch it, he'll walk a few steps, he'll come back, he'll touch it again, he'll walk a few steps, he'll come back and he'll touch it again, and he'll keep touching it. And then when he feels okay, he's ready to go. Pictures in the cupboard, all the places that we go, well, there's not so many places now since we've been in lockdown, but all the places that we used to go, some of the places that we still go, are in a cupboard, which George decided that's where they needed to live. When we moved, that was a new change. He decided that pictures needed to be kept in that cupboard. Now, since his dad has died, he has needed to turn that into quite a big ritual. So he'll look at those pictures 3 times within his morning routine. There's an aeroplane going by. I'm not going to edit it out because it's happened. So that's changed the routine from my perspective, because everything takes longer now, but it's something that he needs to do, and it's almost as if he needs certainty. It's like, these are my pictures now, this is what happens now, because those 3 or 4 days when he used to be with his dad are gone. So these pictures now have become more significant for many other reasons for George. So he will do it, needs to do it again, and then he needs to do it again. It's like 3 times. And it seems to me in George's life, when I think about it, when we go to the lake or the river, he gets in, he does his little stuff, comes, walks out, goes to the edge, goes back in, comes out, goes back in. He does everything normally 3 times. It's like it's his thing. He needs to do things 3 times, and that is fine by me. It's okay. So sometimes when there's a massive, great big change, it's like, we say, oh, they can cope with the really big changes, but God help you if you move that cup from like 2 millimeters to the left, or you move that cushion, it's supposed to be on that chair, don't move it to a different chair. Just things that a lot of people would regard as not that important, whereas a house move or the death of a parent is massive. They kind of seem to go with the flow, and he does, but he has created these other little things, and some of his tics and stims have increased, which has an impact. So they become routine and ritual. So his stims are part, and his tics are part of a routine now. So certain noises he will make at certain times when he's doing certain things. That has become a routine. Certain stims have become part of a routine. They have come to be since the massive change of his dad not being around anymore. So sometimes you may see that with your autistic loved one, that there will be new developments, and sometimes there's even what some people would consider a regression, like, oh, my child's regressed back to a stage when they were younger. And I've noticed that, I mean, a lot of young children do this across the board, whether they're autistic or not. They can often regress when there's been trauma, or if a baby's been born and then in their family they'll want to suddenly act like a baby, and things like that, or they want to be breastfed, or they want to try and drink from a baby cup, and they just want to kind of relive that experience for lots of reasons. But for autistic people, often it's not so much a regression in the way that we may think it is. It's more to do with, I think, just thinking about George, it's like he needs to find an anchor point from before this happened, a time when this wasn't happening. Bit like when you do a restore on your computer. Something goes wrong with your computer, so you restore it back to before then in the hope that it will fix the issue. And I think that certainly for George anyway, he's done that a few times in his life, and there's been big changes. And sometimes these regressive phases only last for a few days, or sometimes they last for a couple of weeks, but they don't last forever. And then he kind of like gets himself back into his groove, and everything's okay again. It's just like a reset. It's like it is literally like a reset. Like, I need to reset back to that, because that is big and massive. So if I go back to a stage before that happened, and I can almost, he might then be able to speed through stuff to get back to where he is now with a new sense of that's okay, because that, I don't know if I'm explaining this very well. It's quite a difficult, I find it quite a difficult one to explain, because it's, you know, you need to see it in action to really kind of go, wow, yeah, I get that. It's like, but my point to you guys is that if that happens with your loved one, your autistic loved one, like not to panic and not to go, oh my God, they regress back, that means this, that means that. It's like, just give them time to adjust and, you know, just to reset themselves into a new routine. There's always a reason why behaviours happen, always. It might not be clear to begin with, and it may not be fully understandable by a neurotypical person, but it is always a reason, and it's logical to the person that's experiencing those behaviours. So and when suddenly a routine that wasn't very important or wasn't that big a deal, wasn't a big groove, can suddenly become the big groove. And other routines that were the big groove, they can just toss them away, like, I'm done with that now. And you'll be like, wow, like 2 weeks ago, if I tried to change that, then it would not have been okay. And you've just come along and just gone, don't need that anymore. Well, that may seem, I don't know what, as from a parent's perspective, but I say brilliant when that happens and a routine has changed because the autistic person themselves has changed it. Then that means they're done with that routine and they're done with everything that they need from that. And then it shows that yes, they can change a routine, which is good, but don't get that confused with, well, if they can change that, then they can change that, that, and that, and that. And why? And if they can do that, then they should be able to do that. Try not to do that, because they could have been building up to changing that routine for a very long time, unbeknown to you. You suddenly come along and start thinking, well, they changed that, so I'm going to change this and I'm going to change that, and then all hell breaks loose because it's too much too soon and it doesn't make any sense to the autistic person. Then you're going to, you know, have all sorts of issues, and you're going to, biggest of all, you're going to confuse your child and you're going to damage the trust. Remember, throughout all these videos, this is about relationships and trust. If you can build a trust, then you can communicate and you can work on things together. So I hope that makes sense, that when a big life change happens for an autistic person, sometimes they regress back to a restoration point. Sometimes they will create other routines, and sometimes like OCD behaviours, stimming, tics may increase because they've coped with the big change. It's happened and they've kind of just gone with it. But to be able to stay coping with that, that is why these other little new personality traits, little tics, stims, and rituals may increase, or they may become really picky or really intense about tiny changes, like, oh, I'm just looking around the room now and thinking, well, maybe the tea towel's always hanging off the handle in the kitchen, on the kitchen drawer, and then suddenly you put it somewhere else and it becomes a massive, great big deal. And you think, it's just a tea towel. You've moved and you're worrying about a tea towel. Go with it. That is what is helping them cope with the move. That tea towel, as an example, needs to be there because I've just moved. Okay, I hope that makes sense. I hope I've explained that okay. Next week, I think is going to be the last week on this routine series. I think. Might not be. I don't know. But I think it will. And we're going to be talking about tools and tools that you can use to help create routines. So things like social boards and picture boards, pecs, photos, stuff like that. We're going to be talking about that. And then after that, we're going to be going into a new series on the senses. So you hear a lot about sensory processing disorder, sensory processing challenges. I've talked about sensory stuff in play, in food. It's everything for an autistic person. You know, pretty much all autistic people will have some one sense or more or all that are over registering or under registering in one way or the other. So that's a really, I think if we can help support a sensory system, then you are, you know, you're going to understand your autistic loved one much more. So that'll be in a couple of weeks' time, all being well. Thank you for watching. Please do continue to, research, ask questions, join groups with autistic people. Join my Facebook pages, dastheus.org group. You can become a member of that. And there's many other groups out there. Keep sharing, keep talking. And, if you subscribe, share with your family members if they're struggling and you want them to become more knowledgeable on autism and stuff. And I always put some links in at the bottom of my introduction and description on the video of other links and websites I think might be useful to you guys. And let me know what you think. Okay, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now.